Welcome, Tiny Hands Big Dreams, here in our off-grid homestead in southern Ecuador. We're going to do a two-part video series on planning your off-grid life. The first one is this one, which is going to cover the nuts, the bolts, the actual pieces that you're going to want to get, and how to plan your life to facilitate that. The second part, my lovely wife actually had a great idea. Instead of just mansplaining over here, she's like, hey, you have one perspective, I have another, which is totally true. The habits of how you use your house and your energy and your water actually play a huge part. And it does. And
that's more of the way my brain thinks.
Right.
So together.
And I hadn't actually thought of it that way, but it's an excellent point. So we're going to split it out into two videos. How to do off-grid, how to make it easy, how to make it economical, how to make it comfortable, how to be luxury in your off-grid, whatever that may be.
And this is before the solar panels. This is not about setting up the off-grid systems. It is about setting up your house, your property, so that you can be off-grid.
Simple choices you can make. You're like, they're the same to me, whether I have waffles or pancakes. It's one of those kind of things. That's all right.
Yeah.
And you make a choice, and what you don't realize is one of them is easy and works with the system, and the other one is this giant hassle and a huge ordeal and everything else. But to you, it's a simple, small choice. So it's just understanding the weight of those choices in setting up off-grid. Now there's two big. It went right in my eye. There's two big. There's a big fork in the road here. Two choices. You're either going to convert the house you're in now, whatever it may be, into being off-grid, and that's one scenario. Then there is you're going to move somewhere to an idyllic little farm in the countryside or in the mountains, and you're going to set up a new house, and you're going to intelligently pick and choose appliances and things and lifestyle and whatever else.
They're super different.
They are. And how it equates, I mean, the size systems could not be more, one could be 10 times the size and cost of the other based on some small choices. So we'll get into some examples here.
In no particular order.
No particular order, but there's certain things that you have to think about that use a lot of energy, and they're not always apparent. The first one is going to be just heat, any sort of heat. Your HVAC, your water heater, your stove, heat, cold, your fridge, that kind of stuff. Those are notoriously big users of power. You're not going to realistically use an electric stove in an off-grid house.
Like a range.
Yeah, like an electric range. There are exceptions, and I'll get into those.
So do you want to go through each one?
Sure.
Where are we starting?
There's so many.
I know, I was just going to do it in order.
Sure.
Just randomly.
Randomly. All right, we're going to start with a small one.
But it's kind of what started this conversation.
It's what started this conversation. Let's look at...
Not smacking me in the face.
No.
Okay.
Die by electric death. Let's look at a food dehydrator. Who doesn't love dried apples?
We went many years ago on the research adventure, as we do with every single thing we purchase.
Dry all the fruit, all of it from everywhere.
But we tried to figure out what's the best dehydrator to buy. We didn't have a lot of money at the time. We still don't. And we were trying to do all the research of which one to get. And there's a lot of choices.
So we borrowed one. Classic dehydrator. Didn't even have a name. Who knows? It's a box. It has racks. It has a fan and a 1500 watt heater in the back, which is an entire household circuit maxed out. And it sucks in air, heats it, blows it over the racks once, and exits.
And it works?
That's it. And it works. But it's the same as running an electric portable heater non-stop the entire time. It's a lot of power. Doesn't work off-grid.
No.
No.
So we wanted... Even though we weren't off-grid at the time, we wanted something that would use minimal power, be super efficient, because we knew someday we would be off-grid.
Yeah, and we had limited power at the time. There was, we only had a cord that we were living on. So The dehydrator, then, and that's the majority of what's out there. Now, we did find one. We're going to have to put a link to it below.
Liquid.
Liquid.
I hate the name.
Liquid.
Liquid.
It's
Liquid.
likely French. So the beauty of the little liquid is it recirculates a good bit of its air, and it uses a much smaller heater. It's not a one-pass system. This actually works to not only keep all your food drying more evenly, you have to dance it around less, but it just uses a ton less power, and then the heater will cycle on and off as needed with the fan staying on. Little digital control. It's really quite nice. Instead of 1,500 watts, we're at like 150 watts on average or something.
Which makes a big difference when especially if you're using it a lot.
You're using it 8-10 hours a day.
Day after day after day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I want to throw something else in here.
But you still get dried fruit at the end of it. Like, it does a slightly better job. But at the end of the day, you made a choice that used a ton less power. Still got the same result.
So I want to throw something else in here.
Yeah.
That goes along with the dehydrator. Freeze dryers are all the rage. While I think they're cool, I think that they have uses. I think that especially if you live somewhere with a very long cold winter and you need to store a lot of things in a small space, it's great.
If you have your own hydroelectric plant.
Whoa.
So the problem is you're running a compressor. It's an air conditioner, basically, and then it has a dryer, and then it has parts, and then it has a heater, and the thing. It is just a lot of power.
It's a lot.
For a very small space, and a vacuum pump. Vacuum pump's a lot of power too. And you get a very small amount of stuff preserved for a ton of power. It's cool.
I'm not saying I don't kind of want one, but not enough that, I mean, aside from the cost and all of those problems, just the power usage alone. Nobody talks about it. It's like, oh, it's like the best thing to use to preserve things. That's
you aren't
fine.
the one that pays your power bill and looks at the kilowatt usage going like, what the heck happened here?
Or you are, but you're okay with that because paying for power is different than I don't have enough.
Sure.
That's a mentality thing. We'll get maybe more into that in the next video. But I just want to throw that in because I know that goes hand in hand with a dehydrator.
It does.
As a huge thing.
All right. So, hot water. Hot water is huge. My buddy calls me. He's in a local city nearby. Oh, there's power cuts. Hey. And they've just extended the power cuts to 10 hours because of drought to the hydro plant.
10 hours a day.
Yeah, 10 hours a day.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And he goes, oh, I want to go off grid. And I've had people just show up and they're like, oh, I want one of them solar panels. And magically my whole house works again. I'm like, it doesn't work that way, guys. Like, it's a system and a process and a thing, and you got to do like some calculations. I mean, I could make it easy for them, but everyone has this idea of you just put up a solar panel and you're great.
And it just powers whatever they have.
Yeah, it's like you just get a U-Haul truck and your entire house just magically fits into it.
Not quite how that works.
You need a bigger truck, maybe. So the big ones that I saw, the problem he had is I'm like, so you need a huge system unless you make small changes. So you have an electric hot water heater. Oh my gosh, the kilowatts, huge kilowatt usage. It's a huge inverter. It's a huge battery bank. It's a huge solar panel array. Or you go spend $100 on the tiniest instantaneous gas water heater, and it still makes all the hot water you need. You pay a few dollars for the propane, which honestly, you'll probably get like a month for a few dollars.
Oh, easily. Like, it just doesn't use that.
And it will save you like $6,000 on the electric system. So what did you want? You wanted hot water.
I like hot water.
Okay. How you get it is a huge difference. And simply that small change of switching to like a gas versus the electric, sort of massive. Electric clothes dryer. Electric clothes dryer is just a giant electric resistance heater and a fan, and it just blows the heat outside through the clothes on its way. Massive amounts of energy.
So you could either decide you really need a dryer, which in some climates I will say yes, you probably need one to be realistically. I
enjoyed a clothes dryer over hanging on a line. We hang on a line now. The dryer fluffs the clothes a bit. It gets some of the fuzz off. It comes out of the washer. You know the lint trap? Yeah, we don't have the thing that gathers the lint anymore, so now it just ends up on my sheets. But the electric clothes dryer is sort of a giant, like, that's a tough sell. You can get a gas one, run it off a propane tank, and a tiny little amount of electric power just to spin it. That's fine. Again, you wanted your clothes dried, so you can go the best way, which is on a line, the next best way, which is a gas, and the worst possible, which is electric. But if you're not thinking mechanically about it or energy-wise, you just want your clothes dry. Small change.
Yeah.
All right.
So our stove range situation
Yeah. She wanted a gas stove because gas.
for gas.
Fuego, as it is in Spanish, is magical and wonderful and heats things fantastically good. It just does a nice job. There's something primal about using gas to heat a...
Lots of people think electric is better. My preference is gas. Will always be gas. It's just what it is.
Again, so we run a propane stove. A barbecue tank will run... When we cook everything at home, there's no eating out. Everything is in here. And a barbecue tank will go weeks running the stove and oven.
A larger tank. I don't know what size it is.
Ours is a 40. Ours is a double barbecue tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get weeks out of it. And you cook... That stove's on all day.
It is.
All right.
Fridge freezer.
Now,
we made a choice.
There are efficient fridges out there. They have thicker insulation. They have better energy ratings. You can find them. They exist. We bought the kind that they sell Coca-Colas in that has a huge clear door with an LED light that we actually don't use.
It's kind of obnoxious.
But it's a commercial one. Doesn't have insulation really. Because a little bit. The door doesn't have much because it's clear. You can just see through it, but it's cool. It uses at least double, maybe triple what a regular efficient fridge would use. I wouldn't recommend it.
But it's also bigger. And that was kind of my reasoning.
Huge. Yeah, it's the whole thing, top, bottom, left, right. There's not like a missing, it's like...
There's no drawers. There's no freezer in it. There's just fridge.
Big, deep shelves.
You fit a pig in it.
So you make your choices. We're like, we'll be efficient everywhere else. We're going to splurge our power on the fridge. Mm-hmm. Uses about 1.5 kilowatts a day. A normal fridge is 3/4 of a kilowatt. Totally depends on the size of fridge and where it's at. Are you in Alabama? Are you in New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a deep freezer.
We do. Deep freezers are better. It's probably less than 0.5 kilowatt a day. They're better insulated
than like a vertical stand-up freezer.
Yeah, the big chest freezers do pretty good. So you got to think like, okay, that's 0.5 kilowatt thing. Like in the scheme of things, it's something. Yes, is it huge? No.
It's not a huge decision.
No, it's worth having.
But which kind of freezer is not?
Now we used to have one that was made in the 50s, 60s?
I think so.
Oh man, it was cool. You could fit a battleship in it and have a small floor. It was the size of an economy car. It was not efficient, so to speak. It used a lot of power. It froze things really well.
It did.
And it's been doing it for like 60 or 70 years.
Now, one small thing. With a deep freezer, if you are freezing large amounts of things at a time, as you do if you are processing meat,
Yep.
If you're freezing large amounts of things at a time, it is not terribly efficient at that part, the deep freezer.
It's true.
So he came up with a way, the royal we, putting a small, it's just a computer fan.
It is.
In the freezer. When I'm doing large amounts, not a few bags of here and there, it's no big deal. But when I rack out the freezer with meat, the little bit of airflow made a huge difference.
If you look at a big commercial stand-up freezer a restaurant would use, there's fans in there, and they blow the air. If you look at a home one,
stand-up freezers do too.
Yeah. If you look at a home one, there's no fan. So you put and if you put a bunch of meat in there, you put like a big old whack of meat. You come back in a day or two, it's frozen on the outside. It's not frozen in the middle. It is freezing so slowly it may take days
And that
to freeze
is
through.
non-ideal for your food, but it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it also then use more power?
Well, it's trying.
It's like, it's working so hard.
But it's not. It is. So the hack for that one is literally I took a tiny little fan. I took, I think, some Ethernet wire, which was like super thin, and I just ran it right, you know, you can run it over the seal. I think
you went out the drain hole.
At one point, yeah, I went down and out the drain hole at the bottom with a piece of cable. And the little fan just hangs and just blows the tiniest bit of air.
It makes a huge difference.
Massively faster cooling, which means the freezer runs, it freezes, it turns off. It doesn't keep turning on. Okay.
No. Heating, cooling of you and your space.
Oh, yeah. So again, heat. This is pretty massive. We have none of it. It's lovely.
Perhaps that is part of the choice.
And
if you want to be off-grid, think about where you want to be. If you're going to be somewhere where it is dramatic temperature either direction or a swing from summer to winter, you're going to need to plan for that.
So we can talk about the R value of our wall here. Yeah, 0. Our house is literally wide open. It is 24/7, 365. It has been since we moved in. It's lovely year round.
Yep. Occasionally gets a little cool.
We're not even planning
a little hot.
Realistic windows at our new house. It's just screens and they're just open. It's literally just lovely year round.
Yep.
But giant home HVAC systems eat a ton of power. So that is something you have to plan into it, or you better insulate. If you're building new, you plan better insulation. You pick somewhere better. If you want to run a heat pump, you can run a heat pump. You get the most efficient one you can. Make sure it's one that is efficient at low temperatures. Sometimes they get down to freezing, and all of a sudden they're like 5 times less efficient than they were 20 degrees warmer, because they're trying to rob heat from the ambient outside air. And they're just failing at it. My good friend Dan has one of the hot water heaters that is a heat pump, which they sold him, and it's the bee's knees and it's super great. He's like, oh, all right, sounds great. So it's the latest technology. He lives in Maine, and while it's great in the summer and there's heat that it can grab to put in to heat his water, and it is more efficient than just electric, in the winter time it's cold. So it's trying to grab cold air, suck heat out of it, and push it into the water. There's nothing to get. So it just runs and runs and runs and runs. And his power bill did this in the winter. And I'm like, yeah, dude, those things are great, like where it's warmer. But when it gets really cold and it's in an open air basement, there's no heat for it to get. Like that, the guy who sold it to you was honestly an asshat. So he's actually switching it out to a instantaneous gas unit, which is better for his climate. And this is part of where you live is part of your choice of what you need and how easy, hard is it. Mini splits, you can get like little mini splits for doing like a room. They're pretty cheap on power. If you get the inverter based ones, they start out real low and they'll spin up. They don't just go full on and off. They'll come on and they'll just use like 200 watts, and they'll cool the room and then they'll shut off for a while. Like, ooh, that's pretty nice. Totally doable in an off-grid scenario if it's somewhere that's hot. But realistically, getting the heat out of the equation, wood stoves, they're lovely, they're charming. Having a single, people say that there's a real difference in a single point of heat, like a wood stove, where people gather around it and you kind of soak up the heat like a lizard or a snake or bird. And you gather around the wood stove and you kind of absorb some heat and you go about your day, and it's a little cooler in the rest of the house, and that's just fine. An HVAC system, you're like, okay, the whole house is pleasantly 70, but it's
just a different, it's just different feeling.
I know people that have gone back and forth, and while the HVAC system for the whole house is better, they actually had more enjoyment out of the wood stove, and sometimes being able to get it like roaring hot and hang around and like they were cold, let it soak in. Also, the wood is free solar energy. The trees stored it for you. It's carbon neutral. If that's important, like you burn the wood and it returns to CO2, the trees outside will eat said CO2 and make more trees, which you can cut down to make more heat, which then releases CO2, which goes back to more trees. It's literally a never-ending cycle. Don't worry about it.
If you're looking at the self-sufficiency aspect of off-grid, I think that wood heat is honestly kind of the best option. You don't even have to rely on propane. Those
trees are literally growing themselves, and if we needed them for heat, they're harnessing solar energy for us.
And they will grow back.
And they grow back. Yeah. Okay, so here's the big one that catches people off. Most people don't talk about this. I've never seen it really in another video. Water. What is the off-grid cost to water? Oh, it's huge. It's massive. In fact, it might even be, depending on where you live, the biggest consumer of energy to do. How do you get your water? Now, if your water is a stream and you merely have to filter it, that is a small amount of energy. It's a pump. We use a UV light, which is a little bit of energy. Other people use a tank. They pump ozone into it. You could chlorinate. There's options. Not a ton of power. If you run a well, which is a classical answer, a well, if we take an average number, if it's a half horsepower well, which is a shallowish well, a normal household uses X amount of gallons per day. The numbers that I saw as the average, grain of salt there, was about 6 kilowatts to provide water with the well pump. Now that's using the well pump as your pressure pump, so it has to make enough pressure to run your house. Usually you put a little surge tank in it, so it'll turn on and it'll refill your tank, and then your tank will sort of drain down until it needs to turn on and refill again. 6 kilowatts is almost as much as we use here on a normal daily basis combined.
Wow.
So they don't talk about that. Now, if you have to have a deep well, if you have to use it for watering the garden,
or animals
or things.
Goodness.
Yeah. It really starts to add up. It really becomes a difficult feat.
Now, this is not a choice you get to make if you are converting, more or less.
Yeah.
If you have multiple water sources, and you can choose which one, but most people do not. But this is something more, I guess, to keep in mind when you are starting from square one on a property.
But an extra 6 kilowatts, and if it's a deep well, you double that, because it just takes more energy to get the water up. So you go to 10 kilowatts a day. Well, that means you needed probably at least 15 more kilowatts of battery, and you probably needed at least 5 more kilowatts of solar panel just for the well. It's kind of big.
Mm-hmm.
Some people collect rainwater. You can do it. It's tricky. It's dirty. Roofs are especially dirty. It's fine for the garden. But for drinking, you have to put in a really good filtration, and that's going to cost you some power there. You got to think about your water. Now, we get into the habits of stuff on the other video, but that's also very important, which can drastically change that number.
But one of the things that I'm not interested in doing is hand washing our clothes. We like the sorry, no, I have enough to do. We like the luxury off-grid.
You get headphones, you get like some good tech.
I still have a house to build though.
Oh yeah.
So, luxury off-grid. I want a washer. I'll make it without a dryer, that's fine. But the washer is important. Also, don't get our washer.
Look, I love Ecuador. I think it's cool. We enjoy it here. The people are wonderful and friendly. I say it all the time. The appliances sort of suck.
We could tell stories about our appliances.
There's a thing with something. There is imports, but they're really rare. Mostly it's locally made stuff. The stove oven, the oven isn't even insulated. So it just blows heat everywhere, and it doesn't actually heat the food. And the washer
uses so much water.
And it doesn't even get stuff that clean.
Really bad.
Okay. So our washing machine uses like 40 gallons to wash to rinse and to rinse. That's like 120 gallons of water. My old washer that unfortunately I didn't bring, which was a front loader,
Seems like a big thing to bring.
used like 20 or 30 gallons.
And did way better job.
Now, when you're paying per gallon for the electricity, the battery, the thing, the pump, and all this to get your water, that's huge.
Now, there's the power cost of water. There is also the literal quantity of water. We are lucky.
Yeah.
Or we chose well. We have essentially endless water. We have never ran out of water in our little stream. If you are living in I don't know, Arizona, you don't have a lot of water to work with. You're working off rainwater or a very, very deep well. You are going to
or delivered.
Oh, there's a lot of people who have it delivered to a sister.
If you don't have other options, you just get it delivered.
Yeah. So you're going to want to conserve it as much as possible. We don't conserve our water a whole lot because we don't need to.
We knew this coming into it, and it was like, here's the deal. The water comes down the mountain. It comes down the mountain whether we use it or not. Maybe we divert it over and it goes through our house and then it goes back. The water still goes down the mountain. If you left the hose on all day long,
it's going to go down.
The water comes from the top and it goes to the bottom. Nothing is out of balance in nature with that. Sorry, the cicadas.
They're rude.
Yeah.
For a lot of people that are trying to conserve water, I think a washer is a huge part of it.
It is.
And it's not something I ever considered before, but if you are like us and homesteading, if you're trying to build a life, if you have children that are disgusting, you do a lot of laundry.
We get dirty.
We do a lot of laundry for just the three of us.
Talk about the pig mud all over you.
I don't want to.
Pig mud, house mud, things, chicken,
corn, there's a lot.
Processing meat.
Oh boy. You're gonna do laundry. Choosing a washer that does not use outrageous amounts of water is kind of important.
It is. Shower. The big rain shower heads were the rage for a while. They use a ton of water. Yes, it's a ton of water, and it's a ton more hot water, which ups those systems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to have one of the little spritzy sprue showers like I had growing up. They kept getting put on the shower head that was like 1/4 of a gallon a minute. That's literally how it was. It just spat at you.
I hate those.
You could turn it to steam, and by the time it got to you, it was cold because there just wasn't enough heat in the water. Like my feet are still dry. Anyway.
A little bitter?
Yeah. So we have a it was a big shower head, had a ton of water. I actually took some super glue.
Oh, that's right.
And I plugged maybe 1/4 of the holes. We've never noticed.
We couldn't get a low flow faucet or shower head here.
Yeah.
Like we're used to having, because we had that for a long time in the bus, because there it was not only the water tank, it was the gray water, so you have to conserve both ways.
Yeah.
So we all just got used to it. So I don't think we noticed.
No. But all the little rubber nozzles, I just touched them with super glue and gave them a little squeeze. And they just, like, every third one just now doesn't
They just reduce
work.
it a little.
Yeah, it's fine.
And it still works great.
And you have better pressure, actually.
It's true. Okay, this is something we don't have, and we probably never will, is a dishwasher. I know lots of people want them. I personally have my gripes about them.
Here's the funny statistic, right? I used to be an energy specialist. I used to do home auditing of stuff. The dishwasher uses less energy and water than doing them by hand.
No, I don't disagree with that.
It's actually cheaper and more efficient to use a dishwasher. Now, there's a couple of caveats on that. The first one is you have to turn off the heated dry, which is just a giant toaster coil that just bakes all the dishes at the end. Pop the thing open, let the dishes dry overnight. That takes like 70% or something of the energy out of it. The other one is dishwashers are icky. I don't know any nice way to say this. I've had to fix ours.
I had worse ways of saying it.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken apart a dishwasher? We hadn't. Ugh.
I have had from the absolute cheapest model that they put in rentals up through one of the fanciest. What brand was it? An LG?
It was an LG. Yeah.
Man, talk about like
Super fancy.
Super fancy.
So gross.
So every part in a beautifully meticulous design. You take the whole thing apart. There's places you can't clean. There's parts that it doesn't clean. There's a layer of funk. And take a homeless person and scrape their teeth and look at it in your hand. That's what's inside a dishwasher. And it's a biofilm, and you can't get rid of it. The only thing you can do is take the whole thing apart, pull the motor, pull the pump, and literally physically abrade it all off every so often. Oh, it's so gross.
It was so gross.
And if you bought a house with a dishwasher already there, it's somebody else's gross. That being said, they are much more efficient.
Sure.
They use less water and less power.
Sure.
All right. What else?
I think that was the end.
So,
Unless there's something else you have.
that is the gist of it. That is all the nuts, the bolts, the how to start thinking about off-grid to be able to have it and have luxury. And since the cicadas have decided it is their moment in the sun to sing,
Goodness.
we'll end this video here. Subscribe if you haven't. I hope you've enjoyed this. Ask questions in the comments if you like. Watch out for the next video when we talk about all of the small habit changes that can make things wickedly cheaper and easier to be off-grid. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you for the next one.